We're now going on to item number 2, West Palm Beach Trolley Expansion. Uyen Dang.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. So I'm sure this will go well with this last conversation. You know, people coming for conventions can hop on our trolley and get to the Norton or wherever.
Actually, absolutely. I was really excited that the discussion on walkability and connectivity. Really good to showcase what we've been working on here in the past 6 months. Ultimately, we've completed the downtown mobility study, and the recommendations was quite simple. It's expand our trolley network. So we looked at it with 2 separate approaches. We looked at it from short-term and long-term vision, because we know that everything is we have to work towards in a step process. So we contracted with 2 teams. One team is Sam Schwartz, which they're going to be completed the presentation today, is to look at our existing RFP. Right now we have a contract that with an operator, and really look at some immediate changes that we can recommend to enhance our services immediately. The second thing is to reroute. Maybe there are some other markets that we can tap into, like the convention center. How can we connect them to other modes? And ultimately, our contract is expiring this coming year, so the last effort is for them to recommend and prepare a new RFP for us so that we are ready to go out for a new bid. The second part of this project is really work with the Jerry Walker and Associates. They are the consultants that work on Palm-Tran RPM. I had the pleasure of riding the new routes last week. It's very efficient.
Wen's car died and she had to take the bus.
I did. But, you know, you get to experience. All the way to Boca, you get to experience some of the complexity, maybe, and challenges for those who are not able. So at this time, I'd like to turn over to Dan Burkowski. He's an associate with Sam Schwartz out of New York City, and he's here to present the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning. Morning, Mayor. Morning, Commissioners. So the purpose of this project over the last 6 to 8 months, and this presentation is really a culmination of that effort. We're still working out some of the details in terms of the plan, but I think this presentation is really a culmination of developing a vision for the future of transit and mobility in West Palm Beach and expanding the current popular system beyond the confines of downtown to, as Wen said, open it up to new markets, increase mobility across the city, and improve some of the equity in terms of transportation access and mobility. So we have a number of recommendations, including immediate improvements and short-term improvements. These are going to be broken up into things that we can do today, things that we can do in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, etc. And then we have also been assisting the city in the decision-making process for what the future of transit in the city of West Palm Beach should look like, and then developing that implementation plan. So we've developed a number of immediate short-term improvements, which I think a lot of you have seen already. This is just a sampling, so some of the examples of short-term improvements are just improving the visibility of the trolley system, particularly the destination of where these trolleys are going. Some immediate things that we can do is install electronic destination signs on these trolleys so somebody from afar can see where the trolleys are going, whether it's a yellow line or a green line, for example, and improve the accessibility of the system in that respect. We've identified some issues with the current routing. We've recently extended the Green Line to serve the neighborhood on 3rd Street, and this extension has proved very popular. The origin-destination pair between 3rd Street and the Publix on Fern is one of the most popular connections on this new system. Unfortunately, that extension has introduced this very long one-way loop that you see from Clematis all the way back to Clematis. So somebody getting on at 3rd Street and going to Publix has a relatively short ride, but somebody getting on at Publix and going back to 3rd Street would have to ride the system all the way back around to get back to 3rd Street. Additionally, you have a shorter one-way route at Fern. Unfortunately, without a major rerouting of the Green Line, there's not much we can do about this loop in the immediate term, but these are some of the issues that we're going to be addressing in the implementation plan for the next couple of years. One way we can avoid those challenges and help and have an immediate impact on customer experience and the efficiency is to hire a team of dedicated staff at the city level whose responsibility will be oversight and thinking about planning for this transit system. We've identified 3 positions that could help. These would be not only dedicated solely to the trolley and transit, but also thinking about mobility in more general terms, bike ped connections, improving walkability, some of the things we've already discussed today. These are some of the high-level responsibilities that these staff members could have. Director of Operations would be responsible for reporting directly to the commissioners in forums such as this, monitoring contracts. Mobility coordinator could be someone who is thinking about strategies for continued growth. And then maybe an operations analysis who's just focused on customer experience, making sure that service is being delivered the way it's contracted to be delivered, and then improving the mode share of the city in terms of the number of people who actually use bike, ped, transit, and active transportation as opposed to single occupancy vehicles. So now we're going to get into our recommendations. This is our plan for the expansion of the system. So firstly, the city has committed to the purchase of 2 new trolley vehicles within the next 12 months. Once that purchase and delivery is completed, we see a real opportunity to use those additional resources to expand and streamline the service that we already have. And this recommendation actually is in line with what Jorge just presented for the convention center. So we would increase the in-service vehicles on each of the 2 trolley routes to 3 in-service vehicles from the current 2. The yellow line would be streamlined to focus on Clematis, City Place, and a connection to the convention center and the Hilton directly. This would improve the connectivity between the convention center and City Place, some of the goals that we just heard about in the last presentation. The Green Line would be further expanded to the northwest to accommodate the growing demand of the neighborhood in that area, as well as to plan for some future development that's planned in that area. The Green Line would be streamlined to be more of a connectivity, a connection for east-west connectivity between the neighborhoods on the northwest, transit connections to the intermodal center, Brightline, Tri-Rail, and with connection opportunities to the yellow line. Both would serve the 10 site, which would give future connectivity to that development and Palm Tran routes that serve the area. And we've also connected both to the campus of Palm Beach Atlantic University. We met with the staff and student body representatives of PBAU. They reacted very positively to the concept of having a direct connection. There's 1,100 full-time residents and 3,600 students that are on campus every day, and all have expressed a desire for transit connectivity to City Place or to Clematis or to the Tri-Rail and Brightline stations that already exist. Moving forward to year 3, this gets into some of the recommendations that have been developed by Jarrett Walker. Jarrett Walker has been more focused on the connections outside of downtown. This recommendation would involve the purchase of a fleet of vehicles which would be dedicated to providing service between downtown and Palm Beach Lakes and the Palm Beach outlets. The black line that you see represents service that would be provided at a frequency of 7.5 minutes between downtown and the Palm Beach outlets. And then to avoid the one-way loops that we just kind of touched on, from Palm Beach outlets, we would have 2 branching services down to Okeechobee, which would operate both ways on each of those branches and provide 15-minute service on each of those branches.
So there's no plan to go north of there?
There is, just, we'll get to that after this, but the...
Selfish question.
no.
I want to be able to take the trolley down.
No, we will. The A line would actually fully replace the need for the green line. If you notice in the downtown inset on the bottom, it would essentially do the same thing. Again, terminating either at the 10 site or at PBAU campus, providing connections to the yellow line and to Palm Tran routes there. The goal for this is for a fleet of fully electric vehicles to comply with the city's goal of sustainable and renewable fuel sources. And we also have branding opportunities. We're calling this A just because it was easy, but we could rename them whatever we want in the future.
You missed the blue line.
Right, the blue line is the next slide. Blue line. So if we were able to modernize if we're able to purchase a fleet for this A line and modernize the fleet of the yellow line, we now have the ability to reallocate all 6 of the current in-service vehicles to a new efficient blue line service, which would extend all the way to the north to Northwood and then down south to Dreher Park. This service would be provided at 20-minute frequencies. It would also satisfy our grant obligations, which would fund some of the purchase of the new trolleys. And it also serves some really a real need. So these are 2 graphics that were developed by Jarrett Walker Associates. The left is showing a poverty density map within the city of West Palm Beach. And the right is showing the density of 0 car ownership households. And we see there are pockets of poverty that exist beyond the confines of downtown, which are currently not served by transit. They're actually somewhat isolated because of where the tracks are, and there just really isn't very good connection. So this will be serving a direct need for these communities, increasing equitable transit connectivity, and hopefully further reducing the need for car ownership and bringing these employees into downtown to work. This graphic represents the increase in the accessibility to jobs that would occur with the implementation of the Year 3 plan. This analysis is based on, so each of these little hexagons is based on the accessibility to transit within the plan, the connectivity or walkability of each of the hexagons, how easy it is to walk from someone's house to transit. And this represents the proportional increase in accessibility to jobs within a 45-minute trip door to door. So we already see a pretty significant impact in just overall accessibility to employment in the city of West Palm Beach. Year 5 is where we expand this system even further. So in Year 5, we would continue to expand our municipal transit fleet. Blue line would be actually split into 2 lines. Now it's called the B line and the C line. The B line would still go north to Northwood with service about every 15 minutes. And the C line would go south, even further south in the Year 3 plan, past Southern Boulevard, all the way to the golf course. That would provide 15-minute service on the major trunks and that one little split segment between Lake and Dixie would be serviced every 30 minutes, excuse me. These would all also have connection opportunities within the vicinity of the 10 site to provide connectivity to the yellow line and Palm Tran routes that will be there. Again, this is a further analysis of the accessibility to jobs with the Year 5 plan. We see the increase in accessibility to the north and south of downtown. That's the resultant of this plan. And then we also see just overall increases in the accessibility to transit overall. So again, it's just improving the mode share of transit and active transportation and alternate transportation to single occupancy vehicles. So we mentioned electric fleet, which is part of the city's goal. This is just a list of the top bus manufacturers of electric buses in the United States,
want a bus.
and some varying models. You see they range all the way from 22 feet, which would be similar to your trolley system now, all the way up to 60 feet, which is not something we're considering, obviously, for this application. And in the coming months, we're going to continue to work with the city to try to assist with this decision-making process.
Yeah, I'm just really, folks have heard me say this, I'm really nervous about talking about a bus-like thing, especially since we had those big blue monsters for a while, and they were so unpopular.
Right.
So I really hope that in the future we keep it looking like a trolley and feeling like a trolley, and that it's sort of that quaint, ongoing look.
Sure, and
it's
there's
not a bus.
there's opportunity to do both. You know, when we're talking about transit access to areas that may be further removed from downtown, we may want to think about more of a transit purpose vehicle, where downtown circulation can still be, you know, something that's within the character of the current downtown. And
I
that's
just don't think we need more buses on the road. I mean, you know, we've got buses all over that people don't take. So I think we just have to be careful about what these look like.
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, one of the goals of this also is to, you know, right now the PalmTran routes that we have, some of the challenges are frequency, right? I mean, Wen can attest to that they only run 30 minutes, 45 minutes on some of the routes.
How long did it take you, Wen?
An hour and a half.
Oh, my goodness.
So part of the way that we can attract ridership and ensure that these are successful are providing frequencies that are useful to people, that people don't have to plan their entire morning around the schedule of the bus.
Yeah.
These are some next steps in terms of where the funding is coming from. I'm going to turn this back over to Wen to talk about some of these opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love how prescriptive that is. You know, year 1 do this, year 2 and 3 do this. That's excellent. Thank you.
So we've identified some potential funding strategies because, you know, having, I guess, the Class A service for our community is there's a price tag attached to it. And with each plan in the report that you've received already has broken it down to what year 1, year 3, and year 5 essentially is. Ultimately, we are looking at excess parking revenue as a primary source. And right now, the CRA is contributing towards the existing system. There are mobility fees that could be used for capital costs, the purchases of our new trolleys, which we have received a grant already for not only the 2 that we're purchasing now, but the future of a fleet of 7 that this the CRA actually took the lead on getting us that grant a few years ago. Ultimately, as part of OBD, and we're hoping that the expansion of the citywide zoning changes, as there is a transit operation fees that's tackled on. So these are some of the strategies that we are thinking of.
Awesome. Good job. Questions? Commissioner Ryan?
Thank you. And as somebody who tried to get to the tree lighting on Saturday night and couldn't, and went back home because of the traffic, it was immediately apparent that to participate and enjoy all the things that the city has, to be able to get to them easier, I think is an important. So with that, you're talking about year 1, 3, and 5. Do we have an idea of what the total cost would be to achieve these goals, and then how we could talk about additional ways to get to those goals sooner?
Yeah. So year 1 would not significantly change. Right now, I believe our existing fees that we're paying for the operator is between $1.2 and $1.26 million. The year 5 or year 3 is going to be $5 million, and year 5 for us to achieve the ultimate goal is $8 million. So we're talking about a significant
Is that,
quadrupling our assets.
how much of that is a one-time cost and how much is annual?
That's operational costs.
It's operating costs, okay.
Primarily, we're not too concerned with capital costs.
Okay.
Because those can be secured over grant over time. 90% of transit operations is in the actual operations.
And some transit expert told me once, you can never charge enough to pay for transit. So we've just not talked about, charging anything really.
Right now, the planned, or the recommendation that we're moving forward, that made our system so attractive, is because it is free.
Absolutely.
And setting up, you're absolutely right, setting up a charging infrastructure is more costly, and it doesn't yield the benefit to our citizens.
Commissioner Schoaf?
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Wen, for your presentation. In some of the things that we're looking at and phasing in our plan, if we can look in one of the phases, looking at some of the communities to the north, the Wester Broadway community, the Coleman Park community, and tapping into the assets that are at the very far north of our city, the port and the inlet, and getting access to those, understanding this is supposed to be a complementary system to the bus system. If we're looking at this system as a no-fee system versus having to pay to use PalmTran, if there's a way to come to a happy medium in there, maybe with an all-modes pass or something that we can work. You've got a lot of great entities involved and done some great work in looking at where routes can go, but if we can look at something to further address that and provide those benefits, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you for the presentation, Wen. I had a question about quality control of the pickup times. I know we talked about the frequency, and I think it was in year one, there was one line that was going to be 10 minutes and one that's 15. Will we, with those new staff roles, or how will we ensure that we're meeting those times? Because what I hear is people saying, hey, I'd be willing to take the trolley, but I waited more than the time that was posted.
Right. So right now, we have, I think the CRA did a really good job at implementing the trolley tracker app that gives us a peace of mind to know when it's coming. The other thing that
And that is usable and helpful, and it's right there. You can see the little trolley coming.
Right. And that's why we recommend additional staff, because right now, our contract is with the city, but there's no really dedicated team that's really managing the contract. So we're looking that part of this implementation plan is taking it back to the city, is really to provide quality customer service with additional staff to help us manage the operational aspect of it.
Thanks. Commissioner Ryan, you had another question?
Yep, thank you. To follow up on the cost and looking at your list of funding strategies, not to start a conversation about style, but have we looked at discussing advertising in a way that creates a funding source that is not offensive, obtrusive, or gaudy, but perhaps in a naming rights or so there are lots of different ways to address that, and the question is, have you looked at them?
Yeah, we did have discussions on that, and I believe that would be, at this point, it's not part of the recommendations, because I think it's like a big fear that maybe because we see the ads that we see on the existing transit system right now, that it may not be attractive and curtail to our audience, which is, our residents. I think we were looking at a very clean and unique system, and so at this time, we're not considering advertising, but those discussion has come up, and that is a part of the solution. I think. Thank you for that comment. We'll do some additional research on how much advertising that PalmTran is actually getting, and maybe do some market research within our area and make that comparison, and then we'll finalize the report.
Just to follow up, because one of the things that I know we've talked about in our meetings is improving our shelters in which people are standing and waiting. And when you tie all of that together, obviously, you want to design something that is in character with the city that could create an opportunity to brand not only the city, but also the system with the bus shelters and naming rights and things of that nature that would bring our community partners into play.
Yeah, great. Commissioner Shove?
Thank you, and along those lines of looking at cost, you'll forgive me because I have a business brain and not an engineering brain, so efficiency comes second to revenue for me. But is there an opportunity that private partnerships along the way, perhaps to get a trolley stop outside of a private organization, could represent a revenue source in that if there's a trolley stop available outside of X building developed in the future, that there would be an opportunity to get some revenue from that?
I think that's a great recommendation. We'll definitely look into it. The thing with the route is that you can have stops along the route, and if the adjacent building is on the route, I think that's an opportunity for us to work with them to create, a stop.
Yeah, and, certainly if businesses will incentivize their employees to take the trolley, that's another way we can talk with them about what that looks like. And good. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So the rollout of the 1 to 5 years, is that based on we want to get data that we're getting back before we make future decisions and moving forward, or is it really based on budgeting?
It's really based on budgeting. That we know the 1 year is.
So if we had $8 million tomorrow, we could do this?
Absolutely.
Cool. All right.
That's what I was getting at, yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just, okay, we got to find $8 million. Thank you so much. It was excellent, and thank you for the presentation, for the plan, and for the great ideas. Good job. Thank you.